All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to continue our lecture on modulation. And now we're going to talk about actually harmonizing modulation and composing with modulation. So let's talk. So basically, the rules for harmony still apply from chapter 10. So it specifically says the same procedure should be followed for melodies that modulate as for those that do not. So all of those voice leading principles that you learned still apply. Just use them. So this procedure is described in chapter 10. To illustrate the technique, two phrases of the chorale tune, Keinen hat Gott verlassen, or Gott verlassen, are harmonized to show you each step of the process. So when you're dealing with modulation, it's sort of like you have to decide which key it's going to go to if you're actually doing the harmonizing. So in our little version, I'll play it for you real quick. This is figure 15.11. All right, and when we get to this part, it cadences, right? And it can go either way. So we've got two cadences to deal with, and we've got to figure out where we want them to go. And this can be sort of iffy. So if our key signature, if we're in the key of G major, or E minor, it could go either way. We have to determine what the closely related keys are, which is what we did last week, right? So our closely related keys are G major and C major, right? So you take one sharp away, add a sharp, right? Or sorry, our closely related keys are D major and C major. So add a sharp, so two sharps, D major, take a sharp away, C major, 0 sharps, and B minor and A minor, which are the closely related keys to E minor, right? And also just the relative minors of D major and C major. All right, so if we look here, we have our options. So I wrote them out on the board. And you can see in green where all of these notes are. And we just have to decide which one is the most likely candidate. So there they are. All right, for this D, C, B, we just ration it out, all right? So if we're in the key of G major, right, and we stay in the key of G major, we'll play 5, 5, 1 as a possibility, all right? So that would be an authentic cadence. We've got D. The C is going to be considered a passing tone, so we just continue the D chord. So D, D, and then a G major chord, all right? And it's going to sound like this. So it's going to sound just like this. All right? So we can harmonize it that way. Or we could get a little crazy. And we could actually do a deceptive cadence. As we look at our notes, we've got a D and a B, basically, as our notes. So we can do 5, 5, set ourselves up for an authentic cadence, right? So the D is the bass note, so D major. And then in a 6th chord, B actually functions as the 5th. So that could be our 5th chord. So we could go 5, 5, 6, which would sound like this. Sorry, let me try that again. So it sounds like this. So very deceptive. Sounds very interesting. Now our other option is that it could modulate. We could modulate into C major, all right? Which would mean at this point that we would have D functions as a 2 chord, a minor 2 chord in C major, right? It's the 3rd of a minor 2 chord, so it would actually be, well, it doesn't matter because the melody is not dictating what our functions on the bottom are, so they can all be root position chords technically as long as the bass line that we create lines up, right? So we could have D functioning as the third of a B minor chord in C major, and then it could end on a plagal or a half cadence with a dominant 5 chord, with also B functioning as the third, and it would sound like this. So you can hear that minor chord ending on a dominant 5th chord. So those are our options, and we have to decide as composers between all of those possibilities what we want to do. And that's basically how a composer composes. Let's see. So if there's any other questions, so basically when you come upon a place that is a cadence where you could potentially modulate, a lot of modulations happen on cadences. You just have to fool around with it and make a decision. Let's see if there's anything else. So yeah, and so measure figure 15.4 also gives you, there are 5 possibilities for the cadence shown in 15.4. We're not going to go over that because I think you get the idea. But yeah, depending on how these notes, specifically in this case the D and the B, function, these are all of our possibilities, all right? So they naturally function as the root in G major of a 5 chord, and they actually function as the third in a 2 chord. So the other thing that you want to keep in mind, so figure 15.16 has some pretty crazy arrows and levels to it, and basically it's showing you how to, if you follow the lines, it'll show you how to basically create a circle progression. And ideally you want to stick with these rules of voice leading and part writing and stick with the circle progression. So remember that descending perfect fifth progression involving a dominant and tonic harmony is important in establishing a key. Very important. So when you modulate to a new key, you always want to try to establish the tonic or at least the dominant right away. So people hear it and they know. So be sure you include such progressions to clarify the key, particularly after a modulation. So you want to make it clear to people that you actually have modulated. Like, hey, look what I did. So it is desirable to include at least one common chord just before the new key is initiated. So try to do that. And then start your selection of chords with the cadence and work backwards to establish a set of smooth progressions. So if you've got your cadence, figure that part out first and then work backwards to find smooth progressions. Yeah. And these are just examples in 15.7 and 15.8 of different harmonizations. So what we're going to do this week is 15.3, so we're going to go back and catch that one. And I want you guys to do the whole thing because I want you guys to get some experience with this. And then we are going to do some analysis. Oh, we're going to do 15.8, which just gives you a baseline, and then you've got to write the progressions on top. And then finally, last but not least, we're going to do 15.9, which is the analysis. I will not make you do all of these. So I'm going to have you pick 3 from 15.3. So 3 that I did not do. So 3 outside of number 1, which I will do for you as an example. And then pick 3 in 15.8, which I will also do not pick the first one because I'll do that one for you as an example. Yeah, and then 15.9, it's just straight up analysis, so I don't have to really work it for you. But yeah, you've done it a million times, and you should be pretty good at it by now. So let's go back to 15.3.